Good afternoon. Rich Nass, Executive Vice President with Open Systems Media and leader of the Embedded Computing Design franchise, here for my weekly chat with Ray Zinn, who is the longest-serving CEO in Silicon Valley history, I believe. You need to correct me, Ray, if that's true or not. Ray Zinn. Hello, Ray.
Hi, Rich. No, it's true. I'm the longest-serving CEO in Silicon Valley. That's the correct statement.
That's very interesting. Okay, well, I'm going to ask you about that later. Okay. You were you had a lot of people working under you for a long time. There's a situation that's recently come to light that brought up an interesting topic. The Wells Fargo issue, where people were asked to do things that were unethical. Now, full disclosure, I have a relative who works at Wells Fargo, and she swears that, the way it's being depicted in the media is not true, that the higher-ups had no idea there's such a disconnect between the high-ups and people who are actually doing this, so I just wanted to throw that out there. But anyway, I'm sure you never asked anybody to do anything that was unethical, but what if you're a worker bee and your manager asks you to do something that you know is not on the up and up? What do? I mean, you might get fired if you try to go around him or report him, or he may make your life miserable if you don't do that. What's the best way to handle that?
Well, if you're having a supervisor that's asking you to do something unethical, it's time to look for another job. In my mind, at Micrel, we had the culture of honesty and integrity. Integrity is doing what's right when no one's watching. So, if you have a boss that is encouraging you to do something that you believe is unethical, then I would definitely look for another job, because it's just going to happen time after time.
Now, that's far easier said than done. I know that I hate to go back to the political election, but somebody said that to Trump. What if your daughter wasn't being treated properly because she was a woman? And he said, well, she should quit. Well, sometimes jobs aren't so easy to come by, in a tough market. And if you have a family to feed, sometimes you can't just go out and look for another job.
Well, I understand, Rich, but the issue is that it's going to happen over and over. Maybe this one time you can get away with it, but if you do, as they say, once you begin to deceive, a complex web you begin to weave. It's going to happen over and over. So it's not something I would recommend you sticking with. I know it's tempting to try to do that in the event that it saves your job, but over and over again, it's just bad policy.
So why aren't you advocating being a whistleblower?
Well, whistleblowers, that's possible too. Most companies now are required to have a hotline under Sarbanes-Oxley, and it's anonymous. You don't have to announce yourself. You don't have to say, this is Ray Zinn, I'm reporting something. You can just say that here's the situation that I'm observing. You don't have to leave your name. It's anonymous. And if it's a public company, you're required to report that to the board of directors at each board meeting if any of these calls that come in on the hotline. And we've had that happen at Micrel. People have called in on the hotline, and we've had to respond to it.
Interesting. So, I mean, you probably can't really get into detail on that, but when people called you on that at Micrel, was it accurate, or were they making stuff up?
Well, in the one case, there was an employee who had it in for his boss, and he just wanted to report something that he thought was unethical that his boss was doing, and not that the boss asked him to do it, but that he was reporting something that his boss was doing that he didn't think was right. And we did investigate it. It wasn't an employee in the United States. It actually was an employee in a foreign country. But again, we have to report those too. So we did look into it, and we did caution the supervisor that he shouldn't do things which are dubious in nature. He tried to explain away his reasoning by saying that it was a gift that was offered to him, that he didn't want to insult the person by not receiving it, although receiving gifts from a vendor is against company policy. But he said that in China, this particular person was in China, he said it's commonplace for people to give gifts. And so, anyway, that was a situation in that one.
Okay, fair enough. So your answer is to report it. Okay, so let me go back one more time. In the case of Wells Fargo, they were asking them to do things that were unethical, but those folks who were making those moves were profiting from it, in some cases handsomely. So if you're the CEO of Wells, what do? Do you fire everybody? Do you do a blanket fire like they did there?
Well, again, I don't propose to know the details on the Wells Fargo thing. I know that they had a quota, and I had a friend who was a highway patrolman in California, and they had a quota on tickets, and he was reprimanded by his supervisors for not writing more tickets, and so he ultimately left the force because he just could not see writing tickets just for the sake of looking for people who are breaking the law, and it kind of bothered him to the point where he actually left the highway patrol. So that anytime you ask people to have quotas, whether it be in the case of the Wells Fargo, a number of clients that you try to register customers for the bank, I'm not sure that they actually told them, or is there any documentation that said come up with some illegal or unethical customers or anonymous customers and sign them up to the bank. I don't believe that was the case. I just think they had a quota, and that happens, by the way. Anytime you have a quota, people are going to find ways to hit that quota, especially if it's money in their pocket.
Yep, absolutely. And I've never seemed to run into your friend, the trooper, who doesn't want to give tickets. I always get the guy who is very anxious to give me a ticket.
Well, again, he just happened to get sideways with him over this ticket thing, and I didn't mean to go into great detail on it. He just thought having a quote on tickets was a bad thing. He didn't think helped the relationship between the public and the police force. So I only share that as an example of how quotas end up being problematic for certain people.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good advice, and hopefully the people out there will be abiding by it. That it for this week, Ray?
Very good. Thank you.
Let's put a wrap on it, and I will speak to you next week. That was Ray Zinn, the longtime CEO of Micrel, a podcaster, an author, and he's here every week. Talk to you next week, Ray. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rich.